Aloha, MedTubers. Are you feeling super refreshed after the holidays? No. Are you feeling really relaxed after the holidays? No. Are you ready to hit the ground running in 2018 with all of this super Montessori stuff we're going to talk about? Yeah, maybe? All right, so maybe none of those things are true for you. That's okay. We're going to start nice and easy today, and we're going to talk about our piece shelf. The piece shelf in our class is the last shelf to tour of our classroom. And it's not last on purpose, it's just that I started on the other side of the classroom and worked my way around, so this one happens to be the last one. It is in no way the least important shelf, because we are building whole citizens. We're building whole world citizens, and that requires peace, let's be honest. So, our piece shelf is very simple. It changes, it grows, it moves, but for now, it's super easy and simple. First, on the bottom shelf, we have a huggable planet, and it's literally just for hugging. It's big, like you can see, like this is, like it's fitting in my arms, right? This is big. The huggable planet also has a huggable moon to go with it. I have yet to get that. I've had this for a couple of years, actually. It started in my classroom and then came home with me when I moved away. My kids use it all the time, and it's really great. I wish, because I'm kind of a nerd, that there was a way to change the colors of the continents, and it's so silly. Those of you who are familiar with Montessori will understand that right away. Those of you who aren't, the continental work in the Montessori classroom is color-coded. The maps that they use are color-coded, and then all the work on the shelf that coincides with that continent is color-coded to that continent, so that the visual is there for them and they can make that connection without having to necessarily remember or retain information. So anyway, these colors are a little bit off. There's no purple. Okay, so anyway, huggable planet is at the bottom of our shelf. Next here we have just the word piece, because I think it's important that we know what it looks like. A book. This is an actual book that I copied and shrunk down to make this little book for the shelf, because I wanted my piece shelf to be, mobile, and actually usually this stuff fits in a single basket when we don't have the space for an entire shelf, so the stuff switches out regularly, and this fits in the basket. Also here we have some symbols of peace, a little Buddha. Again, these symbols of peace change. The word peace and the Buddha and the book, they change regularly, just depending on what we're studying or what we're just excited to learn about, or what we're into. Seasonally, it changes regularly. And then this is something that doesn't necessarily change. It's a mind jar that I made quite a while ago. We have two of them. The instructions online, it's just water and glue and glitter. Super simple. But the more glue and glitter you put in, the longer it takes for this jar to calm down. So it's a mindfulness jar or a calming jar, and the idea is that right now it is settled. When you need a break, you as in your child, or you as in you, because we need breaks too, you take this jar, you shake it up. I like to turn it upside down because it kind of helps get all the stuff off the bottom. I've shaken it, you can see there's nothing on the bottom here, and now we wait. We wait for the glitter to completely settle to the bottom. They will watch it. We encourage them to watch it because it's really mesmerizing. That's the whole point. But the time that this takes to settle is just enough time for a child to settle. And that's the idea, is they have this thing that they can shake it up because they're so angry, and then they sit down and they settle. They put this on the table or on the floor, and they just watch it. They can lay down on their belly and watch it. They can hold it and watch it. If they are holding it, they're gonna shake it up more, so it's gonna take even longer to settle, and that's okay. But this is designed for them to watch that glitter. Oh yeah, you can see it really good right there. So that they can settle. And this kind of is like a timer without setting a timer and having a ding. It's a slightly more organic timer, and I appreciate that. It doesn't feel like a timeout, it doesn't feel like a punishment because it's interesting by itself. So that's our mindfulness jar. And like I said, we have 2 of those. These are just, I made mine out of empty Bertolli's because that's my favorite pasta sauce, and I love the shape of this jar. I think it looks interesting. It's not just like a mason jar. Anyway, that's just me. And then the top shelf here, the first thing that we have is a feelings mirror, because let's face it, children need help with feelings, right? They need help labeling their feelings. They need help learning how to express those feelings in a meaningful and not hurtful way. And for many kids, that begins with just seeing themselves when they are feeling that feeling. So I took this from a sign language book. It's actually part of the sign language job. And right now we're just using it here. And it has sad, but he looks sad. So they don't need to be able to read to use this. Tired, embarrassed, frustrated. So I'm looking at it and so it's backwards for me. Anyway, they can have tired in front of them, or I'm sorry, sad in front of them. And then they hold up the mirror, which I got like a set of 3 at Ross a long time ago. 1 busted, and it took a lot to bust because it's pretty solid in there. But 1 busted, so I have 2 left, and they just look at themselves being sad. They'll cry. They will ham it up for this mirror, and that's the idea. A lot of times when they're feeling frustrated or sad or angry, coming over to the feelings mirror and hamming it up for the mirror helps to dissolve some of that anger and some of that frustration or whatever the case may be, and it helps bring them to a place of playing and joy so that they can discuss what happened. And that's the idea with all of this, is calm them down, get them to a place where they can discuss what's really happening. And sometimes these will work and they will be ready to. Other times they will calm down but not be ready to talk. And I just want to point out that that is okay. It is okay to calm down and still not be ready to talk about something. In those cases, I would try every 20 minutes or so, or between activities when I see that there's a kind of a lull, I can say, hey, are you ready to talk about when so-and-so hit you? Or whatever the case may be. Because I want to address whatever happened. I don't want to just let it go. But at the same time, they are working through their own processes. And so forcing them to talk about it, it's just another way of saying what you're feeling isn't valid and I'm ready to talk about it, so we need to talk about it. And that's not really fair. If an adult did that to you, you'd be like, I'm not talking to you because I don't have to, because I don't want to, because I'm a person that makes my own choices. And I think a lot of times we forget that for children. So asking and checking back in, but at no point forcing them to talk about, what it is that they're feeling. Or maybe even just, talking kind of near them. This is what I witnessed. I noticed that so-and-so hit you before you got really upset. Leave it at that. I noticed this. I noticed there was a reason for the explosion of emotions that came from you. I noticed it. It doesn't have to be, am I right? It doesn't have to be, talk to me now. Just noticing it and them knowing that you noticed it might be what they need. Anyway, I guess that's kind of a sidetrack. Anyway, the last thing on our shelf is the screaming jar. The screaming jar is quite possibly my favorite material that I've ever made in my entire life. It was the first thing I made for part of a behavior management curriculum, and I decided to create jobs for the shelves that help children in those moments where behavior and feelings are getting the best of them. And it was tricky a lot of the time. I'm still developing that curriculum and I'm adding to it all the time. We'll go over it in more detail in another post, I'm sure. But the first thing that I had, the first frustration in my class that I addressed with that curriculum was a little girl who would scream. Not necessarily at me or anyone else, but when she would feel like she was being told no, even in the most kind and non-confrontational way. Any version of the word no from an adult launched her into a fit of anger. And she would stomp and she would scream at the top of her lungs. Not like at me, but just generally, just like I've got to get this anger out. I'm so mad. And I'm all for that. You know, if screaming helps you get your anger out, cool. I'm gonna find a way for you to scream. Hence the screaming jar. Yay! So this is just a giant can of peaches from our kitchen at that preschool. I washed it out, of course. I sanitized it. I covered the outside in felt. I covered the inside. You can't really see it, it's all dark in there. I covered the inside in felt, and then I covered the outside. You can see it's finally starting to come apart, but I covered it in foam tubing. I just took the tubing, I slit one side open, I glued it, the top of the jar, and then put the tubing on top of that to glue it into place, so that when they use this, they don't get hurt from the sharp edges of the can itself. So the idea here is that they put their face completely inside this jar and scream to their heart's content. Example. Ah! I don't even know if that was very loud. I was trying not to be too loud because my neighbors and my kids. But that's the idea, right? So this is on my shelf in the classroom, and now it's here. That little girl screamed one more time. And when she did, she screamed, she got it out, and walked over, and I said, would you like to use this new screaming jar that I made? Let me show you how. I showed her, I demonstrated for myself, and at this point, I've got like a group of 4 children behind me who are like, what is this? She didn't want to do it, but all of the other kids wanted to do it. So yeah, here, you should try it. Pretty cool, right? And then the next kid and the next kid, so they all tried it. She did not want to try it. That's okay, I'm gonna put it on the shelf. And the next time you want to scream like that, this is really the place to do it. She never screamed again. She never used the jar, but she never screamed again either. And really, that's where a lot of the behavior management curriculum ends up doing, is once they see the outlet for that behavior or that feeling, most of the time they're like, oh, never mind. And they give up. Sometimes they actually need it, and it's helpful. And it's also there for them to do when they're not frustrated. This is a big thing when children are trying to learn to do things for themselves, like tie shoes and zip jackets. The only time they ever really practice those skills is in the moment. And in the moment, you're trying to get the heck out of the house. Do you have time to wait for the toddler to try to zip their jacket? No, you don't. You don't. That's okay, because you put it on the shelf. And you allow them the time to practice it when they're not trying to get out of the house, when they're not holding up the entire family, when they're not standing in front of everybody at the restaurant who's trying to get out the door, but they can't because your child won't budge until he zips his jacket. It eliminates all of those because you practice it in the classroom. So why wouldn't emotions and feelings be the same? They need a space where they can practice those things without having to be in the moment. They can practice how their face looks when they have different feelings. They can see what it looks like without having to be in the moment and feeling it also. They can practice these emotions. That's what this whole shelf is. It's practicing the various stages and places and instances where we have to control our feelings without having to be in the moment. That's what we want. We want them to practice it the rest of the time so that when they get to the moment, they've had all this practice with these emotions. They can label them, they can express them, they know what to do with those emotions because we've given them opportunities to practice peace in all its various forms. So that's the peace shelf, and way more about peace and emotions than I was planning to say. I'm sorry. My brain continues on. All right, so that's our piece shelf. I hope that it gave you a little bit of insight into what you might want to do for your own piece shelf. If you have something on your piece shelf that you're excited to share with us, please drop a comment below, link a picture or a video, or put your Pinterest on there and let me know that you've pinned this awesome thing that you're doing on your piece shelf, because I always am looking for places to grow my piece shelf, and I'm always looking for things to share. So let us know what you're doing in the comments. We would love to hear from you, and as always, subscribe to our channel so that you can see when we post new videos. And that's it for today. We'll see you next time.